My name is Chris Cook, and I'm the author of the book, The Philosophy of Competent Leadership. And today we're going to talk about leadership, and since that's what the book is about, we'll talk about the book. And now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define leadership, so we'll know specifically what it is that we're talking about. And in the book, it gives a definition of what leadership is. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my background. I spent 10 years in the Army. You know, I went to college, graduated from college. I worked more than 20 years for the police department, the sheriff's office up in Martin County and Palm Beach County. I also went to law school, graduated from law school, and I founded a law practice with John May. So that's where I came from. And one of the things that has interested me my entire life is leadership. It's one of the things that I've been exposed to. So I'm going to give you the definition of leadership, and keep in mind this definition as we go through this lecture. Leadership is the quality that inspires confidence in stakeholders of the organization or individual's ability to achieve success. So a lot of people define leadership in different ways. Some people say that it's a trait. Some people say that it's a skill. And you guys know the difference between a trait and a skill. A trait is something that you're born with, and a skill is something that you acquire. But they're both qualities. They're qualities that a person can exude. You can look at this person and see that this person either has them or not. So when we define leadership, one of the things I always like to do is I like to ask people, put people in a situation so they can picture exactly what leadership is. And I ask them a question like the world we're at and in, the apocalypse had occurred, and your survival depended on you being able to get all the resources that you needed in order to survive. You found somebody to follow, right? If you didn't have all the answers and you knew that someone else was going to be successful at it, what qualities would you look for in that person? What would you want to see in that person that you would be willing to follow? And so this is how we determine what characteristics are common in leaders, right? One of the things you might look for is honesty, right? You wouldn't want someone who lied to you every time you talk to them. Hey, what are we going to do tomorrow? We're going to do this, and you find out they aren't going to do it. You ask them, hey, what did we do yesterday? And they tell you something that's different from what they actually did. That's not going to inspire you to follow them. Or the person can't tell their left from their right. That's not going to inspire you to follow the person. Or the person is not decisive. You ask them, hey, what are we going to do in this situation? They say, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. So these are the things that are leadership characteristics. And so one of the things I did in the book was I outlined what are the three main things that determine whether or not a person can be a leader or whether a person can't be a leader. And so I came up with the 3 C's of leadership. And these things I believe are fundamental and critical to whether or not a person can be a leader. And those 3 things are character. The person has to be committed to it, and the person has to also understand the competencies of a leader. So what is it that we mean when we talk about competencies of a leader? Those are how a leader addresses the needs of the people that follow them. So you have leaders in different aspects of life. You could have a leader who's a leader at work. You could have a leader who's a leader in the church. You could have a leader who's a leader in a movement or a cause. You could have someone who's a leader in the community. And these leadership competencies and these leadership characteristics, they should be common across the board, regardless of what the endeavor is that the person is trying to accomplish, right? So I'm going to ask anybody in the audience, and you can respond if you think you know the answer. What is it that you think you would look for in a leader? What type of qualities would you look for in a leader? Anybody? Would you want the person to be straightforward, or would you want them to beat around the bush when you ask them a question?
Straightforward.
You would want them to be straightforward, right? Would you want them to be able to try to find a solution to a problem that you had, or would you want them to be clueless? You want them to possess some level of intelligence. Would you want that person to stand up for what you believe is right and what they believe is right, what you know to be right? Would you want them to be understanding of other people, right? You want them to be able to understand how other people feel and be able to relate to it, not necessarily feel sorry for it, but be able to understand what it is these people are going through. So these are the characteristics that experts throughout the field of leadership say are extremely important in leaders. They want the individuals to be honest, forward-looking, inspiring. So we go back to the initial definition of leadership that we gave. We said that leadership was the quality that inspired confidence. It inspired confidence. In the U.S. Army, they gave a definition of leadership that said that leadership was the quality that inspired others to willingly accomplish a mission, right? There are different ways you can motivate people to get them to do something, but when they're inspired, they do it willingly. You could get someone to do something by coercing them, right? If someone told you, if you don't do it, I'm going to do something bad, or there's a negative consequence that you're going to suffer because you didn't do what it was that I told you to do, or what I asked you to do. Or they could say, hey, they could bribe you, right? Say, hey, if you do it, we'll do something for you, quid pro quo. If you do it, we'll pay you some money, or we'll, take care of your family, or we'll wash your car, or we'll, take you out, or whatever it is. But it's not inspirational. When somebody inspires you, they fill you up with a desire to do what it is that you think should be done. So we look at those leadership characteristics, and the character of an individual is fundamental in whether or not they can be a leader. So how does a person develop that character? Because one of the things the book goes into is, how can you become a leader? What does it take in order to fulfill that position of leadership that you either have had thrust upon you, or either you seek, you desire to have, right? You can get leadership one or two ways, right? You can have leadership thrust upon you. Has anyone ever seen that movie, Remember the Titans? Yeah. You have? You remember that line in there where Denzel Washington told the kid, the backup quarterback who was going in, he said, listen, when I was 15 years old, my parents passed away, and I had 8 brothers and sisters, and I had to lead the way, right? Now, of course, you got to think, if he had 8 brothers and sisters and he was 15 and he was the youngest, the rest of them probably were grown, right? So I don't believe that was true. But what it did was it inspired those other people. It inspired that backup quarterback to go in and do what it is to fulfill that position of leadership. It made him want to do it. Denzel did it. Denzel was only 15. So I can do it. I can go in and I can get into this game and we can win this football game. So that's what leadership, that's one of the things that leadership is. And you ask yourself, with the foundation of leadership, how do I get inspirational? How do I make other people want to do what it is that I want them to do? To listen to me, to follow me. Because a leader has people who follow them. How do I obtain those skills? So one of the things the book goes into is it talks about how to obtain those skills, how to develop that character. And whenever you want to obtain a skill, there's several ways that you can get it. You can either be taught it, you can observe it and pick it up, you can have a mentor that you watch, you can read a book, you can read about it. And when do you think you begin to develop those skills? Has anyone here ever gone to church before? Right? They teach you skills, they teach you character in church, right? When you go to school, right, they teach you character. Anybody here ever lived in a house with a family? Anybody? Just about everybody, right? And inside your house with that family, you probably have parents, older siblings, maybe aunts and uncles who come by, neighborhood people who come in and they impart character to you. Like your parents tell you, be honest, be friendly, care about people, don't be selfish. All of those things help to develop your character. So developing your character can start whenever. It can start at the earliest of ages. How many people have ever heard the story about George Washington when he admitted that he chopped down the cherry tree? Has anyone ever heard that story? Nobody? Well, they may have stopped teaching that story because the story goes that when George Washington was a little lad, a little kid, that his parents went out and saw that the cherry tree that was in front of the house was chopped down, and they said, "George, who chopped down the cherry tree?" And he said, "I cannot tell a lie. I chopped down the cherry tree." So that's a lesson in honesty, right? George Washington was a little kid. He realized that being honest was important, and later on he became president of the United States because he embodied that quality, right? So that's one of the things that we do. Some of the other qualities that you develop as you grow up. You play video games, you become imaginative, right? And one of the other things is there's also negative teaching, where you see somebody else, you watch court TV, you see that someone did something they shouldn't have done and they had to suffer harsh consequences because of it. So you learn from that also. And that throughout your life, at any point in time, you can learn something. I talked to my daughter the other day, and I told her that you don't always have to go to school to learn. Actually, when did she ever take a lesson on how to walk? Did any of you guys ever take a lesson on how to walk? Any of you guys go to school and take? I don't think anybody's ever taken one. You watch somebody else walk when you're a little small child and you started walking, right? That's what it was. So you learn just from walking, just from watching, and there are different ways that you learn. And almost every aspect of leadership, there's a complete discipline that goes into it. Like the things that make a leader successful, those characteristics that make a leader successful, there are classes on it, like communication, which a lot of you guys are taking, problem solving, leadership, business, management, supervision, etc. Now, I want to go back to the beginning, because one of the things I said is this book is about leadership. And leadership is not necessarily the same as supervision or management. Do you guys know what supervision is? Supervision is oversight. When you provide oversight, you supervise somebody. You supervise a work site. You supervise the preparation. Or you supervise the shipment. You supervise the development. So oversight is providing oversight. Management is regulating resources, regardless of what those resources are. They could be human resources. They could be money resources, water resources, supply resources. That's what management is. Leadership is inspiring others overall so that you can accomplish what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You look at some of the great leaders in history like Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi or Abe Lincoln. These guys, they inspired other people to want to follow them, even at great risk to follow them. So now we're going to talk about leadership competencies. Now, you guys remember what it was I talked about competencies earlier. That's how I said the competencies were how you take care of the people who follow you, how you take care of those people who depend on you or who view you as a leader. And has anyone in here heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You have? So you're going to realize that in almost any leadership class that you take, it's going to touch on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Because Maslow, in his hierarchy of needs, what he talks about is the things that motivate people to do what it is they need to do. So when you look at his hierarchy of needs, he set it up by saying that at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs, he had the physiological needs. Your physiological needs are those things like being able to get air, being able to get water to drink it, being able to wash bugs off you, being able to not freeze to death, stay warm, those things. And then the second thing he said was a safety need, was that people wanted to be able to feel safe. That's like being safe from animals attacking you, people attacking you, or being robbed or threatened in some kind of way that you believe is detrimental to you. There was also the love and belonging need. And the love and belonging need is your desire to have relationships with other people, whether it be familial relationships or intimate relationships, parent-child relationships, brother-sister relationships, to have a group of people that you can relate to in some kind of way. There's a need to have that. And there's an esteem need. That's to be told that you're doing a good job, or to get an award, get recognition. And then there's the self-actualization need. And that's your highest ideal of yourself. What do you want to do? When you were in second or third grade, your teacher came to you and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of you guys said, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be the president of the United States. Well, if you actually accomplished that, and that was actually what you hoped to do in your life, then you would have fulfilled your self-actualization need. Now, one of the things about Maslow's hierarchy of needs is Maslow stated that before you can get to the second, third, or fourth, or fifth need, you had to first fulfill the first need. And before you can get to the third one, you have to fill the first one and the second one. And before you can get to the fourth one, you have to fill the first three, etc. You have to fill them all. You can't immediately go from nothing and become a self-actualized. You couldn't do it. You have to think physiologically. If you didn't have any oxygen, you'd be dead. Of course, you wouldn't be able to fulfill any of those. If you didn't have any food or water, you'll die. You wouldn't be able to get to safety or any of those things. And if somebody was robbing you all the time, you wouldn't worry about too much having somebody come and tell you that you're doing a good job, or giving you recognition for the great job that you're doing, because you'd be worried about your safety, etc. So when we look at competencies, what we find is this satisfies those needs of these people, the physiological, safety, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization needs, to allow those people to move up to the next level.